Let's start with this one. Blizz finally overhauling WoW's creative leadership team by Bellular Clips. Let's see what this guy
WoW's
says.
getting a new narrative director.
And a
That's
new
something.
creative director, which I think people kind of
Wait.
Oh, I totally did.
Yeah,
Who's the narrative director? Wasn't that the newser?
like that's it. Because I saw obviously the narrative director, and then I saw the post. I read this. Okay, well, that reports to the creative director, and then I was like, wait, but the creative director was Alex Afrasabi, and to
Yes.
my knowledge, the creative director was never replaced.
No, instead I think Steve goes to principal narrative designer. Right?
Yeah, so
Okay,
So
Steve
I
was
guess they
principal
never had
narrative
that role fully filled.
well, they didn't fill creative director after Alex left, not at all. Then narrative director is a completely new role that they've never had before. They're kind of splitting up creative into two different ones. So yeah, no, seemingly no one replaced Alex, so they're hiring, and obviously they may not hire externally, but they seem to be splitting that up and finally acknowledging that maybe World of Warcraft needs someone to handle narrative direction entirely.
Yeah, good, because it's been a fucking mess.
Yep, absolutely.
And hey, maybe this means they also know that, right? And you kind of think about, sort of parse through some of those things, and I think it was an interview that Steve gave during Shadowlands development. It was post BFA, but it was acknowledging the fragmented and confusing nature of the in-game story.
Yeah.
So it's like they're talking about that before Shadowlands, and then they do Shadowlands. It's like that just kind of shows that there's almost certainly a capacity issue at play, right? In addition to everything else.
Yeah, so at least they actually are now putting up the money to get someone else specifically for that role, which is cool.
This would be good. Big think.
I mean, yes, yeah, of course it's going to be good. There's a narrative director, but that assumes they hired the right person.
Yeah, so there's two, creative director and narrative director, right? So the narrative director is a completely new position that did not used to exist.
Okay.
So basically in the past, the creative director would have just been doing all of this stuff. That's Alex Afrasabi. Obvious reasons. He goes.
Gets the bit.
2 years.
I'm not sure it's a good idea to have two of them, because previously the creative director would have covered much or all of the responsibilities outlined for the narrative director. But it's like, okay, so narrative director, let's say he's like the story and the characters and stuff like that. But the creative director will have to make the art behind it, and which also tells the same story but in a way of art. Wouldn't you want the guy who completely understands, in this example, the character's story background, to also understand the art that should be around this, surrounding this character, or something like that, right?
Years later, or whatever it is, we find out about what actually happened there.
Look, usually if you have a vision of something, it's not just the vision of the thing, it's a vision of everything that has to do with it, right? It's like you create a whole fucking narrative around your creation, if that makes sense.
Steve Nooser gets promoted.
But we'll see.
And I think for the longest time we were under the belief he was the most senior person handling narrative in the game.
I believe so, yeah.
But it's interesting that he didn't have that title.
Yeah, but then that title didn't exist, so it's like, yeah.
Yeah, or I guess the creative director title.
Yeah, I think the...
So did they have a creative director?
Alright, so narrative director does report to the creative director. Okay, so it's... Oh, okay.
Or was that just
interesting?
Steve kind of... I don't mean this in some, he took the power. No, I just mean that guy's gone. Now who do those responsibilities fall to? And oh shit, we haven't made a new role for this.
Yeah, so the awkward thing is, and I'm very sorry, I can't remember if it was Unknown Character 14 or Nightstalker 314, because all I saw was the 1-4. But I think it was Nightstalker said, they had checked the credits and said there's no creative director title in Shadowlands. So that was just an empty role. Which,
Well, there we have it, folks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
For sure. Yeah, that's...
That explains a lot when it comes to Shadowlands, I guess.
Pretty funny.
Can't believe we had to check that instead of just knowing. But yeah, the I guess the thing there is, it was Nightstalker. Yeah, so I think it was Yeah, the creative director role goes onto so much more stuff generally than the narrative design. So I could see why Steve wouldn't have that title, because that would be picking up a massive amount of other stuff. Because the creative director, obviously, as we'll find out later, is talking an awful lot about the like the visual design, like the art style, that kind of stuff as well. Obviously, they have an art director too, but it's like the overall,
the big
you know,
vision.
in a sort of, because it like lacks any of the gameplay stuff. Obviously, that's game director does a lot of that. So it's like very much this isn't the whole this isn't World of Warcraft anymore. That would be the creative director's responsibility in terms of we'll bring it back to Azeroth and bring you back to stuff that stuff that you like to see. That's kind of creative director decision tier stuff.
Okay.
And clearly they've started that process, so hopefully the creative director comes in and goes, yes, absolutely, or whoever they if they promote to that position can kind of follow through on that.
Yeah, and it seems like basically these are Holly's direct reports.
Yes.
So I guess if Ian is a direct report to Holly, these people are direct reports. Well, no, sorry, the creative director is a direct report to Holly.
Yes.
And that can kind of help you understand what the highest level leadership team of this game actually is. So,
Holly just rules all of Warcraft now. Sorry. Holly rules all of World of Warcraft now. It's John Hyde who rules all of Warcraft.
Yes, that's it. Because, of course, let us not forget about Arclight Rumble.
Yep.
She also rules over. And I presume other projects.
I would hope so. Yes. Because if they... Well, yeah, generally, if they figured, okay, let's do a massive push for Warcraft, and the only thing they have is Arclight Rumble for the next couple of years, I'd be very disappointed. Very. I have to assume that the other mobile game in development is Warcraft, or at least what I call it, at least I'm trying to figure out the term for it. Heroes of the Storm style kind of multiverse stuff, maybe. But then they want to do that again.
No, I think they're going to go straight with their recognizable franchises. I think on mobile they already have Diablo. StarCraft has, in my opinion, no place in mobile, but that's me being just a bit of a PC gamer for a minute. But I don't think StarCraft is there for the broad audience, right? So if you think of all their IPs, like Warcraft is the one.
Yeah,
totally. Right. So for these positions, then the narrative director.
I still want the FPS. Okay, this is what I want. If anyone ever played what was the name of the Command Conquer Renegade? Command Conquer Renegade. Make that as a StarCraft game in the StarCraft universe, and the units basically you can easily make like a Rainbow Siege with StarCraft units kind of thing. Right. But I think Renegade would be way better. We have missions, and you can choose. Let's say for the story, you can't choose which character you go with. You can be a ghost, you can be a marine, you can be like what do you call it? Like the guy that jumps on walls and shit like that. Be like those ground units, and like you have to go and do a mission, whatever. And it's like eventually you have missions with Zergs, you have missions with what's it called, with the Protoss, stuff like that. I would obviously be Protoss, Dark Templar all the way. But yeah, I think that would be really fucking cool. An FPS from the StarCraft universe.
Will be guiding World of Warcraft's ongoing story, overseeing the narrative design discipline. Success will entail marrying a deep understanding of epic fantasy storytelling with a keen sense of the strengths and weaknesses of the medium. It's also important to deliver an immersive and impactful story experience.
And by the way, you can easily make the story for that game take part during StarCraft 1, StarCraft 2.
Indeed.
Or I suppose it'd be just like the lot in FF14, where I think they just say, fuck it, we'll just brute force our way through.
Yep.
Okay, so as for what this person will do, guide the narrative evolution of the world, cultures, and characters of WoW. Mentor will need a team of narrative designers. And this is thrilled to let you know my AirPods are nearby. That's cool. I love pop-ups.
Yep.
Also,
why do you keep making this window size different every time you
Oh
stream?
wait, yeah, I don't really know why that happens because now it's full screened.
I really don't like
That's not
Mac.
full screen, clearly.
No, it is.
Okay.
Technically, this screen is more than 16 by 10.
Yeah.
So I think it just needs to be pulled up vertically.
Yep. I'll do that. 1 second.
Whoops. Right, so yes, mentor and lead narrative designers communicate a story vision across the development team, balance moment-to-moment narrative experience with the planning and execution of arcs that span multiple years, and that, I think, is the really big one. The one expansion that I think really fucked that the most is actually not, I don't think it's Shadowlands. Shadowlands was kind of just lame and boring most of the way through.
Balance moment-to-moment narrative experience with the planning and execution of arcs that may span multiple years. Good. That's a really good step. That's basically how Final Fantasy plans their story 10 years in advance. Obviously, not all the small details right away. I did find a lot of discrepancies in mainly La Habrea, and even overall during Heavensward as well. There were problems with like knowing the full story. There are problems in some core stuff, like the whole. So the Shiva thing, you can kind of make sense of. The King Thornton thing, not so much. If that makes sense. As an example, La Habrea doesn't make sense at all. Elidibus is kind of okay. I mean, he's overall confusing. Like this whole balance thing, I don't really understand too much about it. I'm assuming the balance thing with with Elidibus is like when it comes to like the reflections, because you have a star full of darkness, and so you need a star full of light to counterbalance it, a reflection full of light to counterbalance it when they become one again, or something like that. Because the other dead planets, or they're not dead planets, but like they were already rejoined, because there were 7 rejoinings basically. So you have 7 stars that already rejoined, or something like that. So, but they were balanced when they rejoined. So now you have the world of darkness, and you need the world of light, kind of like counter each other when the rejoining would happen. I think that was what Elidibus was working towards. Yeah.
Through, but it's BFA, right? Because they kind of were so focused on this bit, that this bit was just really lame, and even by their own admission, ended up being really fragmented and confusing for players. So I think it's good to see that, right? And I mean, I don't want to say it's great they're looking into this. No, obviously they'll be looking into this right now. So I think it's probably just a capacity thing. Because I suppose if you like, is some of this a situation where I only say Steve because he's the face of the lore. Blizzard, makes him the face of the lore. Yeah. And I think as well, from what I understand, he is not unaware of the criticism that goes on. And
I'm sure he knows. He has Twitter,
to,
right? It's like not like he's completely
be
oblivious.
The face of it to sort of take all the hits and sort of shield his team. Which I mean, fair play. That's a pretty honorable thing to do.
I mean, man, don't you just miss the days when like you didn't really have Twitter and all that stuff, and you could actually do your job, not thinking that how much criticism people are actually going to give you for doing a bad job? I'm not saying the newser specifically did a bad job. Maybe he did part of it. What he did was a bad job, but it's like now you like if you're working in this sphere like of gaming and stuff, and you make a game, man, you do a bad job, you get like destroyed, demolished on the internet. And that's why I feel like no one knows, for example, who is really responsible for certain fuck ups in let's say Elden Ring, right? Like people had some complaints about Elden Ring, whatever, the FPS and whatever. They don't have any one specific person to blame for it. They just blame the company, and it's a lot easier to not get discouraged as an employee. Whereas like if you are personally get bombarded, like still the user, man, that's rough. It's so fucking rough.
But I suppose you end up in a situation like Alex goes, and maybe they've expanded, because I had heard they'd expanded the team of narrative designers, and perhaps it ends up being this situation where, you know, it's like this team has grown, but who manages it? Who runs it? Because maybe the guy who manages it and runs it also has a whole bunch of other responsibilities, right? It's like
clearly the case,
yeah, for so much of this, you know, we all want to talk about, oh, everyone has an angle. It's very salacious. They're trying to kill the whatever. But often I think it just ends up being really run-of-the-mill managerial problems.
Could also be both of them at the same time,
that's
though.
always it's always what it comes down to.
Like, I'm sure that the people who work for Blizzard are not trying to, on purpose, kill their own fucking game. But they're succeeding in doing so, nonetheless.
Yeah.
If something's not going right, it's, you know, unless, well, maybe, but generally speaking, it's just because people don't have the time, capacity, or process to do what they want to do. Because no one sets out to make a bad product. Like, I mean, maybe an individual would, to be tremendously awful, but you wouldn't feel that, like, from a team effort. They definitely, everyone
usually,
goes,
also, like, you can't feel from a team effort, because, like, the one person who wants to ruin it also doesn't want to be found out that he's trying to ruin it, because he would get fired. So it's like, if there was a team effort to ruin the game, everyone would fucking suffer, and no one could hide. And you can't even hide it if you're doing it as a team, right?
Man, I wish I could make this really better.
Yeah,
I'm assuming that a lot of them, you know, take the criticism on the chin and be like, oh shit, well, I really wish this wasn't happening, because I really wish it was a thing that you enjoyed more as player.
It's like they're so ambitious that they just don't have the time or the resources to make what they're so, like, what they envisioned into the game, so they give you a half-assed product. Thanks. Basically, thanks.
For basically
good job
on that team, I imagine.
I think the issue is kayfabe, right? Like the way that the PR comes out, and I think, I remember it sort of to do with. I actually think this was from Danny O'Dwyer of the No Clip team, their documentary in FF14, where the Westerners were kind of being like, Yoshi P and co. Wait, Westerners don't respond to you saying sorry all the time.
Yeah.
You know, right? Weakness. You know, like the South Park. Like, yeah, maybe it displays weakness. Or, you know, the South Park, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry for what?
That's a sound clip.
Someone's got that.
Yeah, work with that, Connell.
You know what I mean, right? Where, like, maybe there's something there where they kind of, it's like there's just this cultural thing, and then maybe if you exist in that whole, or even like the whole, you know, people might think, oh no, what was it? No feedback in the no something in the dojo. Negativity in the dojo.
Negativity in the dojo.
Like, people might hear no negativity in the dojo and think, oh, that's going to be some latte drinking milk alternative, you know, the standard thing people sort of rage at. No, that quote comes from Alex Afrasabi, the big alcohol drinking raging misogynist. He's the negativity in the dojo guy. So you just kind of wonder, like, they probably are more aware of the criticism and more willing to deal with it themselves, but
I have no idea what he's talking about at all. I was like, the fuck are you talking about? Negativity in the dojo and all that shit? Like, what? The apologies from Yoshi P? Like, what are you talking about? At first I was like, okay, he's talking about, like, how Westerners are not appreciative of apologies as much as maybe people from the East. And I was like, I don't know, like, him apologizing actually went a long way. But it's not like he was only apologizing. He also, like, you know, try to do shit while, like, you know, like, yeah, he also gave you free game time. Like, he didn't just apologize emptily, kind of like Ian apologized half-heartedly because, like, yeah, sorry, we fucked up, dude. Yeah, no shit. Anything else you want to say? Right? It's like, I don't know. That was a weird one, I think.
You know, the whole way that it goes online, nobody can kind of, like, acknowledge the thing. It's just kayfabe, you can't break it. You know, it's like it would shatter the veneer, shatter the Blizzard veneer or something. I don't know.
It's that case of like the veneer isn't really a veneer, like a nice here's a beautiful veneered bit of wood or whatever. It is like a crusty old veneer that's like growing mold and is terrible. You're like, yeah, you might want it's like rust rather than a veneer. You really, really do want to take a wire brush to that and try to get it. If there's anything beneath all that rust, try to get to it and show it off instead of this. I guess this rusty git is just sitting there like, man, that really needs cleaned up. The veneer is just. I mean, I think you just have to look at what people talk about Blizzard online to figure it out. Yeah. I would want to shatter that veneer, get rid of it, throw it in the bin, bury it, and make sure no one ever remembers the Blizzard that did work after he reforged, that struggled with World of Warcraft for so long.
Yeah.
Absolutely. If you were in
the current
top
day Blizzard
position there, you'd probably be thinking, okay, well, how do we get out of this fire PR wise?
Fix your fucking games.
And then build from the ashes, basically. I think. But
best ways to fix your games.
Nah, their PR team's too big, I think, for that to ever be allowed to happen.
Here's how you do it. I mean, I'd say fix the game, but here's how you really do it. So Warcraft 3 Reforged has barely seen improvement. It's decent now, but it's like, how about make it what you promised? Yeah, it's gonna cost you money. Yes, reputation costs money. Yeah, you might even make a loss on it. Fuck it. Get the people's trust back. Like that longs for such a much longer fucking way than for a longer duration of loyal customers than half-assing a game that is iconic to so many people for probably about 12 million players, just based on Wrath of the Lich King. Just saying. Fix World of Warcraft. I mean, that's on the most obvious one. And what do I mean by fix World of Warcraft? Does the story need fixing? Yes. Does it matter that much? No. I don't think a lot of players play WoW for the story. More interesting things in or around Mythic Plus. That would be a good thing. Raids. Make them more accessible. Again, maybe not remove LFR, but why is LFR even there? It doesn't make sense, in my opinion. Just make normal the LFR, and that's it. Honestly, make normal something you can queue into. You really don't need to make normal really, really hard. Just make it like a 14 or a 20 man or a 10 man. Queue into it and balance it according to that. Heroic is something you need to actually have a party for, and make mythic raiding, in my opinion, transmog only. I think that would be fine. And then you don't have the massive item level jumps from LFR all the way to mythic. I don't think there's a need for that to have such a massive difference in gear variation, like at least power levels, for a current tier. I don't think it's really needed by the game at all. Fix PvP. Fuck, man, I don't even know how you fix PvP, because battlegrounds work very different to arenas, work very different to 3s and 2s, and it's like 2s and 3s have their own balance, battleground have their own balance, and it's kind of shitty. Yeah, the whole thing with the world, in my opinion, the World of Warcraft world was never really relevant. So, but those are the things you really need to fix. Those are the main three attractions for people playing the game. Make that interesting, make that more accessible, make it more alt friendly so people can actually play your game.
Oh, that's weird. I think given the time and budget, most people can do a really good job, right? And that's some of the issue here. Yeah. Imagine for Pale if we just. The great thing is I think we're slightly ahead of schedule in development actually, which I think is a testament to that team.
Yeah, for sure.
Take, for a fun narrative disaster that's only really fresh in my mind because I watched the awful movie that it was. That Star Wars movie, the last one, yes. Right? It's fucking terrible.
Rise of Skywalker.
That's it. The
yes.
movie.
Yep. I agree. Last Star Wars, honestly, all three of them were kind of.
JJ's a rumbly boy sometimes.
Poo poo.
But maybe if that didn't have to be turned around so fucking quickly, and they actually had time to craft something that wasn't a total heap of shit.
Doubt it.
So I think what happens is, all of these deadlines, it's like, well, shit, we need a movie to come out next year. Well, if that's going to be possible because it takes all this time and post production and yada, 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 you have to start shooting by then. You have to have a workable script by then. And then they end up, I think, in this situation where they look at it and they're like, oh man,
Not even
script's
close.
not ready. There's. Because you look at that script for Rise of Thingy, or even the leaked ones that were supposed to be, way longer, and it's like, yeah, big unfocused mess. They evidently tried to pick little bits of the unfocused mess, put those to film, and maybe they'll get something at the end. But maybe if they had another year, I remember seeing an article. It was one of the guys from Saber Interactive. I think it might have been their chief guy. I forget, but some game they were talking about. But he said, like, look, 3 months turned it from a 5 out of 10. It was the Evil Dead. Yeah. That was a game that in its mock reviews was getting like 5 out of 10s. Yeah. And, now it's like a 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10 is generally the consensus. And it was a massive success for them. And that happened because they gave it a 3 or 4 month delay for the polish and stuff. But I think the tricky thing when it comes to narrative stuff, with narrative is, and this is always the problem video games have with narrative, it's really cheap and easy to write words.
Yeah, isn't it? Like, well,
now I'm not saying that as a way to diminish writers, and I mean, our game is a game that relies heavily on words, so I'm not trying to cheapen that.
Yeah, basically, word count doesn't really matter. You can kind of churn medium, low quality stuff out really, really quick.
Yeah.
Stuff that'll fit the bill. But for narrative, you want, you need, because that's like the foundation, especially when you're like setting up all your quests and they have to make sense for everything. Basically, like the narrative and the plot and stuff is like the super important foundation that you're going to build on with content. And if that stuff's cheap and easy, then if you don't pay it enough respect, then you can't really add on the end.
Yeah, and it's like you can write all these words and stuff, but that has to match content. And the content, you can write script faster than you can implement content in game.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when these things aren't really in lockstep, and I think evidently their production cycles have been all over the place, right? Like the every second August we get a WoW expansion. Yeah. Obviously that got delayed with Shadowlands.
Obviously.
And likely
Just
Q1
tiny
2023 with this next expansion.
Yep.
It's that thing like the script for a movie. The screenwriter's not the final person. Like the final script that gets submitted is not what you watch. What you watch is what the editor of the movie has done. Right? Yeah. So the final edit to a script is done by the movie editor, the film editor. And I think in this situation it's like, the final edit of whatever Steve and the team come up with is probably not Steve and the team. It's probably production.
Yeah, I mean,
whatever they can actually put in the game.
Yeah, realistically, in terms of who has the final say, it's probably close to like John Hyde, or I guess it would be Holly Longdale now, in terms of, we literally don't have time in the production schedule for this. This needs to go. And maybe it's not just like a specific thing, but it's like, you need to cut, this many. I don't know how they measure time, man months or person months or whatever.
See, but like, let's say that is the case, okay? The narrative team made so much story that you can't even put it in the game. Let's say, I don't believe that's the case, but let's say that's the case. So, one, either the production team is like completely incompetent, they can't add that content in time. Two, the narrative team is overzealous and it ruins their whole game because they create too much story for what is even feasible to put into the game, right? So one or the other is incompetent because, well, or just management is incompetent because they're not clarifying the goals. Either way, they clearly don't have a goal in mind or a schedule or a, what do you call that, time management in mind, and no one is controlling the shit. It's like every team is doing something completely different and they only meet at the end and they don't interact throughout. Like, why?
Whatever. Then that goes to Ian, who's like, okay, we have to cut, a dungeon or something, because he has the pick of game director. However it works, I think that's kind of the thing where there is There is an editor. It's just in a very different sense, I think. I think.
Yeah, so I think a lot of that happens, right? And even in games that aren't so story focused, like your anthems and all these games that come out and have a lot of chaos, it really is a lot of these things. I think we just see it very keenly here because WoW has got a fandom that was used to a big lore, not really a big story, but a big lore. So then when the lore and the story really were tying each other together from like I think a lot of Mop onward, or I guess it's really Kata onwards. Like that did happen more and more as soon as Wrath starts.
Yeah.
But like, you know what I mean with the way that the game story has changed. Like you go from Mop where the storytelling of the zones is like very boom expansive, and then you go into WoD where it's like here's the fucking campaign.
Fair enough.
I think you end up in situations then
I
like
see what
Shadowlands where evidently there's problems and who knows. Hell, even was it Portergage? Was it Samaya? I forget. But the tone of the battle for Azeroth cinematic
was
when you think
completely not in sync with the game.
Doesn't really make sense, given that Teldrassil happened first.
Yeah.
Like, the portrayal of the Alliance doesn't make... You know what I mean? It's like... Just tonally, it and Teldrassil are so weird. It almost feels like their initial plan, and this is not my idea, this is either Samaya or Portage, I forget who, internet people. Because I hadn't really thought about this, I just sort of took what we were given. But after they said, it was like, oh yeah, shit, it kind of does feel like Teldrassil probably... Or like the order of those probably were flipped initially.
Yeah, something like that.
And then you hear that that cinematic's like one of the last things that Metzen worked on. And then, try to think that through with the timelines. And then think about when War of Thorns, etc. would have actually been built and created. And that was way after that. Right? It's an interesting little thought.
Yeah. I mean, just to kind of come down to just to go back to what you're saying about the timeline stuff, there is that like project management principle of like time, cost, and quality. Pick two on like a triangle, so you have to pick between one of those is. And it feels like consistently, they're not happy enough to push for. They're not going to spend enough money to get over the fact that they're asking for it in an unreasonable amount of time. I think that's a general trend. But was it Ned Sucker just said yes? Where were the Night Elves in that battle/cinematic? Yeah, you would expect them to be, very, very angry, very active, very on the front lines.
They would want to be there.
Yeah, it's like this is why they need a narrative director, because there is just nothing there. There's no through line whatsoever. And obviously some of that's because, you can't...
But regardless of the Teldrassil, why weren't the Night Elves there regardless of the tree? Like, even if let's say the cinematics were flipped and the attack on Undercity was supposed to be before the tree burnt, let's say, why was every race there except the Night Elves attacking the undead?
Can't do the War of the Thorns in game anymore.
Oh yeah.
So it's kind of it's been a little bit. I don't want to say retcon because it hasn't been, but it's been memory hold a little tiny bit. And that's the general very awkward stuff. There's no direction. Well, there's direction, right? But there's clearly not a lot of consistency.
Very messy direction.
No one has oversight. I think that's like the best way you can think about it, right? There's no one has oversight. No one actually sits down and goes, here are all the pieces of the puzzle. How will we arrange these for a satisfying experience? I think it was someone in chat a long time ago said something about, I'd say a long time ago, I meant earlier this stream, said something about, cutting ideas. And I think that's actually really important. Or I think basically it seems like without a narrative director, or maybe even with with the creative director as it was, it seemed like they kind of have more ideas than they can properly implement, which sort of happens a little bit.
Yeah, that's what I said.
All the stuff with Tilia, all the stuff with Kalia, being in the Shadowlands, all of those were clearly ideas that they had, and it just kind of didn't go anywhere. But then they were allowed to go through with the stuff they did want. So stuff like a little bit, obviously they didn't get to finish the Drust storyline, Arnwild.
The stuff with Kalia Menethil and Talia and all that they can easily make side quests. They're like they don't really do anything. You don't have to do them, but you can take them. Fuck it, and do some random questing with them, and just like for people who want story. There's no reason to take it completely out. Oh, but they don't have the people, right? That's so dumb.
But they did talk a little bit about the Drust in Ardenweald. They did kind of
Very little.
That, there was all the stuff with the masks. It ended up being like small, reasonable little bits of like quest of narrative, but they didn't tie in. And it's like, would we rather have not had that stuff in Shadowlands? Would we rather have had better, the stuff that we actually miss? Would we miss the masks if Bane had a storyline in Ardenweald? Stuff like that.
Jesus Christ,
kind of the
fucking
stuff
Bane.
where I guess, yeah, someone needs to be able to say, okay, no, we need to do less. We need to do less and higher quality of it. But
That'll be fair.
It's weird because I'm kind of I'll tell you what I'm thinking about quite a lot, because I've been playing TBC Classic to prep for Wrath, and I've been doing specifically one thing that I really loved. I haven't continued playing that character, but I went to level 20 about level 20 on a Draenei Shaman, and Blood Mist is incredible. Blood Mist is an absolutely fantastic little zone. It's kind of hard to gameplay wise. It kind of sucked, right?
The Draenei
But in
area?
terms of all of the stories that you were told in Blood Mist, all the stories of like the ghost pirate up at the top right, who there was the Nag invasion off the coast. There was all of the ways the Satyr were involved, all of the ways the Blood Elves were involved, and how everything like that kind of made you feel overall was really, really nice and really small. But I mean, I don't even really have a point.
Yeah, I
really,
noticed. But what are you talking about?
They really should put a lot more time into developing these storylines in a more of an overall way, instead of trying to send us out 50,000 different cool directions at once. Because there's almost certainly a place where they didn't bother with the Talia and Boulevard stuff or anything like that. They didn't bother bringing Bane into Shadowlands. They didn't bother bringing Thrall. Helya didn't make an appearance. And then all of that.
The Helya thing is so weird.
Design wise and content wise into, okay, we'll tell a better story with this Drust stuff. We don't need to have a raid to finish it off, but we will actually introduce a beginning, a middle, and an end to this one storyline. But I think they kind of feel like they need to have all of their content threaded through everything that happens in the game, including all the raid storylines. I think that's like, hopefully the narrative director can kind of pull this stuff together and go, okay, well, what do we need to not worry about? What stories do we need to start and finish here in a satisfying way, instead of trying to do everything at once and failing?
Yeah, no, for sure. I say that I don't know everything you said because I wasn't in the room.
Basically,
good, by the way.
Oh, nice, good. Yeah, basically just talking about how the narrative director is someone who needs to say no.
Yes, that's one of the most important things.
Get the line of stuff up to here's the line of, cut everything else off, because everything else is just distracting and a waste of time. Even, man, I could talk about it for ages, but my recent experience because, man, how you move around zones and going through stories is completely nonsensical, a terrible gameplay experience. It wastes all your time, and I love it to pieces. It's it's the gnome in Stone Talon who says go to Ironforge and Stormwind, then come back, or like, that's like 45 minutes, dude. What the fuck? I'm not a mage. I don't have a portal. Okay, sweet. I guess I'll go. I'll take a flight. I'll get the boat. Okay, I've got the boat. Sweet. Now I'll run for like ages. Oh, now I need to stop and do a bunch of other quests on the way, because some of them might lead me back and around the place, and you end up in these little side adventures, and everything was like this little really nice little bit of narrative. And it was.
I mean, when he puts it like that, I agree, but I didn't like it either, because it's like that quest. So, for example, okay, so this is what would happen a lot of times. Like specifically what he's talking about. There's a quest, I think it's a level 5 quest in Stormwind that sends you to Ironforge, and then that quest would send you back to Stormwind. Now, in order to get there way before, and also there was one like that from Ironforge to Stormwind, then it would send you back. And by doing that, now you couldn't take the train back then. You had to go through like wetlands and all that stuff. You had to make the run. Anyways, Don Moreau, I think, or whatever, and then wetlands or something like that. Doesn't matter. Anyways, it was a very, very long run. Now, while doing that, you do pass by zones that have quests. The problem is, well, you go to those zones, you do their quests, go on a separate adventure. The quest that you were on to begin with becomes useless. It doesn't scale or whatever. By the time you actually get to do that quest, it's just hanging around in your quest log, and it gives you like no XP because you might be like level 10 or 20 by then before you even get to fucking Stormwind, which is like why? But that also could have been on purpose. They did that quest on purpose, so you have to go explore and find those other stuff. And like that quest goal is not to give you XP or whatever, it's actually to make you travel. So maybe.
Kind of sent you everywhere, and it wasn't all just here's a level design box that finishes you all of everything. You finish everything once. But that's a different topic for a different day, maybe. But yeah, wild stuff. Wild stuff.
Yeah. So I guess there's talking about the experience the candidate needs.
Yeah, I thought this was very interesting.
Oh yeah, multiple years experience in game narrative design roles. Proven leadership as a narrative lead on at least one AAA game.
Yep.
So certainly
On ship.
trimming down the candidates and
yeah. So
I mean it's tricky. Like, what are you going to do there? What games do this well?
You basically, if you're asking for that, you really have to poach real hard. Yeah. Almost for sure.
Yeah, and like, who the fuck are you going to poach?
That's the thing. I have no idea. I
Maybe
have absolutely no idea.
Someone from BioWare Austin who wants to get rescued.
Maybe that would be basically it.
BioWare Austin.
And then in that case, well, I suppose you would have to put this list opening up or listing up anyway for legal purposes and stuff. But yeah, was it yeah? Why would anyone who led a AAA game want to work on WoW? I guess because they have a personal relationship and like it, maybe, or because Blizzard are promising a lot of money and a lot of, here's a really great franchise to work on and a really great forward-looking franchise to involve yourself in. But this is the awkward part, right? Where if you're in this realm of you have a broad knowledge of Warcraft and you're up to date with everything like they're asking for, because they're asking for extensive knowledge of Warcraft franchise lore and content and gameplay.
Crazy.
So that is definitely like, we need someone from a AAA game studio who's been the narrative lead on at least one AAA game, multiple years of experience, and you need to know about as much as Ian Bates does. Or like, fucking luck. Good luck finding someone like that, but I mean,
certainly hard. Look, I think this bit is just, it needs to be someone who knows what it's fucking like.
Of course,
right, the ship's AAA bit, because
I think out of all of those, the least important part was that first point of like lead AAA narrative designer or whatever.
We talk about, I would almost say, the easy bit of the job. What's hard is actually making all of this shit happen in the environment of a large team and all of the things that AAA brings, which is stuff like, hey, you're holding up one of the most important lines of business for our humongous publicly traded company. Which is a very different set of pressures to say what an indie developer will have. Yeah. Right? Like, yeah, and then typically a lot of indie publishers are a little bit, I don't want to say diversified, but they usually have quite a few projects, or they'll be happy enough to delay something because for a lot of those indies, the indie pubs, they know that the best way that they can market their games is it's not through fucking spend. It is through word of mouth because the game is brilliant. So that's why there's almost more of an incentive on that like indie pub side to ensure game quality is high.
Yeah, that's exactly kind of it. Where you just need to.
Plus, they're privately held, so it's like if the boss is happy enough with it, okay.
Yeah, it's like I guess back in the day, I say back in the day. I'm not even referring to any specific time. Just before an arbitrary point in time where indies had access to tech, where they're really good and money. Back in the days when indie games meant Super Meat Boy and not a AAA game made by less people over more time, and not in a publicly traded company, I guess. But back in those days, it was like, if you wanted to be a narrative designer on a massive project, or you wanted to like have a lot of tech at your disposal and a decent number of people and like really build something fantastic and amazing and incredible, you would need to go to AAA. But now, if you want to, you're like, man, I love being a narrative designer. I want to write and be involved in the next Dragon Age. Not literally, but the next Dragon Age style RPG or next Mass Effect size RPG. There's almost definitely an angel invested group of 30 people somewhere in like Chicago doing that. And that'll be way better than doing it for like Blizzard or for, I guess, even BioWare at this point. And that's the awkward thing, I think. Because it's EA talks about this quite a bit in their recent earnings call about talent and talent acquisition. And they're just like, we're doing well because we have everything set up for this, but it is an exceedingly competitive market. We're like the leaders in this market, basically, in terms of being able to acquire talent, but it is a competitive market. I think that's it. Where Blizzard are just going to have to really, really pay a lot of money to get this position.
Not like Blizzard doesn't have the money to pay.
That's unfortunate for them, but
I'm sure they know that. A fun thing here is the empathy and wisdom to absorb passionate feedback.
Oh,
Do you know what
God.
that means? No negativity in the dojo. It means the opposite of that.
Yeah,
that was Afrosabi's whole thing. And I think with Afrosabi, no negativity in the dojo didn't just mean us. It also, I think, meant colleagues.
Yeah.
I honestly think you can easily take it as like the dojo is your mind and there's no negativity there. So any negative feedback and stuff like that, it doesn't turn to negative in your mind. It just is feedback. It's like, okay, something we need to work on, something we need to work on. Not like, fuck, they hate me, I can't do this anymore. Yeah. I'd say that's what not negativity in the dojo would mean more.
Like, if you want something good, ignoring feedback is the worst possible way to get it. You're never going to get it.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think here's a decently good way to solve this. Let's say you're the one getting all the heat. Okay, you're getting all the tweets, all the negative feedback. You hire somebody to filter out those that are actual feedback and versus ones that are just like nasty comments. And then you only read the negative feedback. Right? Which is then not as offensive to you because it's not like direct assaults. It's just like, hey, you made a shit game. This is why, and all you gotta have the guy filters. This is why. You don't have to go through the this is a shit game too part and give it to the guy who's being bombarded.
It continues saying from numerous internal and external sources.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah. I
like to think we're the pretty pedestrian ones for criticism.
Oh yeah, like it takes a lot of effort to criticize the game while remaining this civil. I think that's the way I'll put it. It takes a lot of empathy and wisdom to provide passionate feedback as well.
Yeah, I'm sure.
That's it. Masters of empathy and wisdom.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah, because look, obviously a lot of that just comes down to fuck the writers, fuck you. This is the something agenda and that agenda and this agenda, and you ruin it. It's the thing when people don't understand why something happened, perhaps because maybe they've not worked in that environment or whatever, then they'll be more likely to assume intent. Where it's like, usually people have good intent. I think everyone here has good intent. It just obviously hasn't came together. And then, as I talked about earlier, the fucking kayfabe is what makes it feel, to the fans like we're living in fucking Looney Town. Right? Where it's like nothing's real anymore. It's the end of a 20 years. Of course, it's the end of a 20-year saga. Whoa, it's just like Endwalker. In fact, it's double. It's a 2-decade saga, not a.
Probably the dumbest thing they've said. Maybe even dumber than having special water that you can walk on.
10-decade, whoa. Right? Yeah. So, look, good that it's there. I think, I don't know, like, you would have thought that this would be expected in general. Maybe they felt they needed to put that there. Maybe they also wanted the community to see this because they knew the likes of us would look at it. But that said, it's a big corporate environment. Are the people that, handling careers postings actually thinking about the PR, implications of that? Perhaps not.
Honestly, if whoever had to write this up was literally thinking about, YouTube videos that criticize them, I'm really sorry. That's a lot to deal with. That is a hell of a lot to deal with when you're trying to write a job description.
Or Twitter.
Okay, well, can you handle a lot of literally who's attacking you online for shit they know nothing about? Yeah, we have to put it in the job description because it is literally true. It's very unfortunate it's true.
It is, but also warranted. And like again, I always say it's like you don't need to be a book writer to be a book critic. You know, just have to have a strong opinion and direct it at actual feedback. Same with like games, same with like movies. You don't have to be a movie scriptwriter to notice a script is shit. Okay, you just have to have good comparison skills to other movies that have good script, something like that. Okay, good stuff.